I hope they see me as a helpful big sister who says, I know it's hard, and I believe that you've seen some hard things. Come sit by me. And I hope I can give you a little bit of encouragement and hope that there is life and goodness out there still, and you don't have to pretend it was perfect. It's okay to show up and say the thing that was uncomfortable about the church thing, and you won't be shunned. You won't be shunned. It's okay.
Hey friends, welcome back to the Broken to Beloved podcast. If you're looking for compassionate conversations that provide practical resources to move toward healing and wholeness, this is the place for you. Today, I'm talking with Amy Fritz about navigating the spiritual abuse world from a position of having a platform or a podcast and all the decisions that go into it. We really get honest and a little bit vulnerable about our thought processes, how and why we make the decisions the way we do, and what we're hoping for our communities. This is a real look behind the curtain or under the hood of how we do things. Amy is the creator and host of the Untangled Faith podcast, where she invites her listeners to join her for conversations about what it's like to hold on to your Christian faith while untangling it from all the things that should never have been tied to faith in the first place. After several years of podcasting and connecting with individuals who've made difficult and beautiful decisions and wrestled through what they believe, Amy has discovered that her most important work is to offer encouragement, community, and space to folks in this untangling space. And friends, I think that's exactly what you're going to find. And so, here's my conversation with our friend, Amy. Amy, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Brian. It's so good to be here.
It's so good to officially have you. I feel like we've had so many outside of this conversations.
I know, we should have been recording months ago.
Probably. And so here we are, right? Is there somewhere you want to start?
I want to start with how, since we're in this space and there's a regular stream, maybe stream is too bold or too strong to say, trickle of scandals from big to small, that because of social media, people become aware of, and kind of how you process it, what you think about what your job is when it comes to that sort of thing. Should you do something? Should you not do something? Do you have a rubric?
It occurs to me before we dive into that excellent question that for people here who don't know you, or how do we even define this space?
What is this space?
Right? So what is this space?
Yeah.
And introduce people to you.
Yeah. I'm Amy.
Hi, Amy.
Amy Fritz. You may know me from the Untangled Faith podcast.
Mm-hmm.
But if I'm new to you, I am also a podcaster like Brian, and we do the space that we're in. We interact with a lot of people that have been hurt in church faith communities. We rub shoulders with people that have been harmed. We pay attention to what's happening, the healthy and unhealthy things in the evangelical church in particular, because that's who a majority of the people are that I would say we interact with. So that's sort of the space we're in. And that's the frame that I'm coming from.
Yeah, I think that's great. I think I would define the space mostly the same way. I like that you said we pay attention to what's happening.
Yeah.
Because it does very much feel like that. Mm-hmm. And also to a certain point of capacity, because at some point it becomes too much. And I appreciated learning the term, as crass as it sounds, trauma porn.
Oh,
because
wow.
I think especially during 2020, there was so much of it going around.
Yeah. How would you describe that?
Well, the cop-out answer to porn is always, you know it when you see it. But trauma porn, I think specifically is, whether it was George Floyd or all the other slew of Black deaths at the hands of police officers, or all the anti-Asian hate that started happening later that year, and attacks in alleyways, on the street, in the subway. Because of social media and everyone's smartphones, everyone's out recording everything, and then everyone posts it, and then we all watch it as if we're supposed to be witness to that.
Yeah.
And it really does nothing to help me. There's a part of you that wants to see it because you want to be informed.
Yeah.
There's part of you that has a morbid curiosity of this couldn't have really happened. Is this real? There's a part of me that's like, I need to see this to verify something. And then at some point you recognize this is completely and utterly dysregulating for my body and is not helpful in any way. As much as I can have a curiosity about it, it's a counterfeit. Even though it is a real event happening, it is a counterfeit to what I'm actually looking for. And I don't even know what that is right now in the moment. Except if, if we're making the analogy to pornography, it's that idea. It's like it's a counterfeit replacement for meaningful connection or intimacy.
And maybe a feeling of control of something that we can't control. If I know about it in some way, I have control about the situation and control the situation, which in most cases probably isn't true. But I think there's probably different ways to take in information too, and how much you take in and where the line is going to be different for different people. And what their thing is, that what their work is that they are called to do. Because we don't want people to like just put their head in the sand and pretend like everything's great. But also we acknowledge all day, every day is just a fire hose of bad. There's just no way to function. That's no way to function.
No, it's not. Well, and I wonder if the counterfeit, what we're hoping for is justice. And if I share this video, more people will see it and see what happened, and we will get justice. And I don't know if that's the answer, but it occurs to me. So this is the space that we are in, that you and I occupy. And I recognize that it is a difficult space. It can very often become a sacred space because of the courage of people who choose to tell their stories.
Yes.
I mean, you just released that episode with Melissa Hogan and her involvement as an attorney in a big case with someone who had their identity revealed and doxxed and all these things. And it's like, when abuse happens, one of the damaging side effects is that you are stripped both of your story and of your agency, that you don't get to tell it yourself and that you don't have any control over what's happening. And so I think when we talk about being in this space and keeping an eye or a pulse on things that are happening, I think one of the things that I've learned in terms of rubric is that I need to be aware of how I am being affected. A major rubric for me, and I wrote about it very recently, is that I want to choose to be responsive, not reactive.
Okay.
It's so easy to be reactive.
Yeah.
It's so easy to have a hot take. I have plenty of hot takes. I just try to keep them to myself,
and I have
or just share them with my wife.
I have some regrets. Plenty.
Yes. And it's a hard lesson to learn. And same thing, I've learned it the hard way. It's like I've said too many things spouting off online that I didn't really need to say publicly. I could have written them down somewhere else and just kept it to myself or kept my mouth shut. It didn't add anything to the discourse. It wasn't meaningful or helpful to probably anyone but me. And it does more to stoke further rage or disparity or division or whatever it is, and doesn't actually further a cause of anybody.
Oh, yeah. I have so many thoughts as you're saying that a really good question to ask is, what am I trying to accomplish with my response? And you talk about responding. That is a more intentional thing than a reaction. Reaction is like, I feel it, I'm saying it right now. I think a response does have that intention of, I'm doing this specifically. I have chosen this words and this time in this way specifically. And I keep saying that word specifically, but I think it's powerful because not everybody will have come to the same place of what they should do when they ask those questions. It really depends. There's a whole range of things that we are good at, are knowledgeable about, or influential in what areas we're in. And so I think it's really fascinating to have this sort of conversation and think about how people could slow their roll and still not all respond exactly the same way. I asked about the rubric because I had a conversation, I don't know, maybe 2 years ago now with KJ Ramsey, and we were talking about the same sort of thing. And she said there's like these 4 questions, and I wrote it down. But I have to give her credit because I did not come up with this. And she may publish this in a book at some point. But like is this for me is a good question. Is this for now? Is this something right now that I need to think about, weigh in on? What does no violence in my response? And what is my gut saying? And how do all of those come together and where's that center circle?
Mm-hmm.
And I have kept that in a little graphic, like in my Canva for 2 years, thinking about it. Yeah. And my friend Janai, you've had her on the podcast.
Yep.
She often says, she points to a rule of life. If you can think ahead of time about how you want to respond in an XYZ situation, you will be less reactive, less anxious, and you'll feel more like the way you are in this space truly reflects who you want to be. So, two people that I've borrowed some information and insight from.
I love that. And I think that's part of why I spent so much of last year trying to identify and articulate the values I want to live by within Broken to Beloved. Mm-hmm. Because I know what I want us to aspire to become or how I want to choose to be presented as a resource. And reactive hot takes are not one of them because I think we have enough of those.
So I would love to hear you say something specific about how that played out recently. Like we've had some things that have happened publicly.
Just a few. Uh-huh.
Yeah. And how did you respond? Like what sort of public response did you have? And how did that reflect the values that you had been sort of formulating and communicating?
Yeah. Well, so let's just name a thing very specifically. Tim Whitaker and the New Evangelicals and the Grace Report with their contracted worker who was a key player, I think, in their organization in terms of nonprofit stuff and her experience. So when that news broke, I'm pretty sure I learned about it the day of.
Yeah.
And I thought, let me just learn what actually happened. I don't need to say anything about it because nothing I say will be useful because I know very little about what actually happened.
Yeah.
Right. And so I tried to follow things from a distance without engaging in the conversation right away, which means I didn't have to go on and like or heart or follow or subscribe to anything. I could just read it and then keep on scrolling.
Yeah.
There's the caution of I don't need to look like I'm aligning with one person's point of view or voice or the other until I feel like I have more information. I do know that because of the work that we are in and the space that we are in that we defined earlier, that my default position, and this is something I know we have written down to talk about later, is my default position is to believe the abused, is to believe the storyteller or the person with less power because of how often this happens over and over and over in this space. Yeah. So my default position is to believe them when they say something and to recognize as an executive director, as a founder, as an organization, that my default position will also most likely be to want to defend myself.
Mm-hmm. Are people in similar situations?
Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so I was like, I know the desire to do that, and I will fight it with everything I have because I know that that's how abusive and unhealthy, toxic places work. Yeah. And so I want to fight that instinct. And so what does it look like to pay attention to what the accuser or the abused or the survivor is saying and how they are saying it and what processes they went through and what they personally went through just to post this online and say something out loud requires an incredible amount of courage, among other things. And so what it looked like was just reading things for a couple of days and not saying a thing about it.
And the report was really long. So if you were reading the report and making a response like immediately, I have to wonder.
Yeah.
You didn't, it was like 90 some pages. Mm-hmm. There was a lot to get through. So I think it only made sense to take a beat.
And I will fully confess, I did not read the report. I think you did. I think you said you did. For me, that felt like trauma porn. Like, I don't think I didn't feel the need to read the whole report. I thought she did a great job summarizing on the website that they created to summarize what was the highlights of the report, or I kept seeing other people quote things from it. I was like,
I think there was a couple different credible places that shared summaries of the report where you could get it from more than just one person that's personally involved in it. Yeah. Where that you could see that there were some facts that people agreed with on this. Like there's some very specific things happening that nobody disputes. And that alone, I think, was enough for a lot of us to say, okay, but there is something going on here that we need to
Yeah.
process.
I think there was enough corroboration. And I think in the episode with you and Melissa Hogan recently talked about credibility, checking the credibility of the witness, checking the credibility of all parties. And so the credibility of the report felt like it held up for me. The next question was, well, if I want to say anything at all, not even what is it, but why do I feel the need? Like, why would I possibly say something out loud in public about this thing that has nothing to do with me, except for the fact that it operates in the same space that I am?
Yeah.
And so I took another day or two to just sit with, well, how does this make me feel and why? And can I tell you, my overriding emotion was grief. It was, this could very well be me one of these days.
Yeah.
And recognizing that and seeing it. And I had a board meeting that was coming up like the following week after, or a week or two after it happened. So I was like, this is something I know that we need to talk about now. And I told my board, I was like, I would hope that if something like this were to come up and there were an accusation or an allegation against me or against one of you as a board member, that we would not show up on social media with a big smile thanking people for their support, but rather with grief and sorrow saying, we are so sorry something like this happened here.
Yeah. Yeah.
And just say that right up front. And that what we want to communicate to you is a deep sense of lament.
Yeah.
And we want to get to the bottom of and make as many repairs as we can. You know, we talk a lot about rupture and repair.
Yeah.
And there has obviously been a rupture, and we want to do what we can privately first to repair what we can. And now that this is public, we want to let you know publicly what is being done or what actions are being taken. And so part of the response behind closed doors with my board was, we've been trying to get a safeguarding process and reporting process in place as it is. And, you know, we're still working on it because these things take time. And I'm a recovering perfectionist, so it just takes me too long to just hit publish and say, okay, this is done. The other part of it was I did finally write a short piece that talked exactly about that. It's like, I want to choose to be responsive and not reactive. And I want to reiterate and communicate to you what the values are, which kind of become the rubric for how I want to approach these kinds of things when they happen, whether it is internally here at Broken to Beloved or externally somewhere else. That I'm not going to jump in to one pool or the other, but to just approach things very open-handedly and with curiosity.
Yeah. I love that that is put out there because it's something you can point to at any time now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so the next time, and there will be a next time, something happens and somebody says, why haven't you done something, Brian? Why haven't you said something? Is you can point to, I have been thinking through how I want to handle things like this, and this is my approach. Yeah. The other thing I think that's really hard is sometimes when we have conversations that say, I'm slowing my roll and I'm considering everything, is that people assume that is a both sidesing a situation. Yes. And I just want to clarify that I don't think that's what we're doing. I think it's a hope for clarity and taking the weight of these things seriously, because there are image bearers on both sides. That's what I will both sides. And it does not mean that I don't think that that makes the harm any less.
Yeah.
But I do carry that weight of how I respond. I don't think anybody requires me to have an immediate response in most cases. You know, and you mentioned my conversation I had with Melissa on my podcast. She said, you know, it really depends on your relationship with the person too. If you don't have a relationship with anybody personal in this, then you really, it makes sense to be like, maybe I don't need to make a definitive statement about XYZ right now. But if one of those people is somebody that everybody knows you are connected with, you've platformed, or you're best friends with, you have another consideration to think about in how you respond. And this is why not every response is appropriate for every person, I would say. I was thinking about the situation with Aaron Ivy about a year and a half ago and how I responded to that, because I don't have a relationship with anybody in their world. But one thing that I saw was an area where I could say, I feel like there's some possible communication happening about the situation that troubles me. And here's what it is. And letting people do what they can. Like I could point to something I had learned, not this is what everybody should do, but say, I'm worried that people are talking about an abuse situation like it's an interpersonal conflict or just a simple marriage problem. I was concerned about quickly talking about something like it should be a redemption story when we don't, so those are the sorts of things I felt like I have had enough conversations about this. I just want to put that out there.
Yeah.
And I didn't share it right away.
Sure.
And then I shared it I made some slides that I put on a carousel post on Instagram, and I turned off the comments, because I didn't so much want people saying, yeah, and so-and-so's doing it wrong. I would much rather have people interact with that information and then figure out what they want to do with it apart from me.
Yes.
I think that's one of my rules of showing up in the world that I'm trying to lean into is like, can I just offer something as something that may be helpful? And who is it that says, take what you need?
Andy Kolber.
Andy. Yeah. Take what you need. And if it doesn't apply to you, if it doesn't resonate, that's okay.
Yeah, that's okay.
It might help somebody.
And it might not. And so I think that's the other part that I'm always trying to be really aware of or conscious of is this is part of being trauma informed, is recognizing the dynamics of how people respond after abuse. And if our agency is so often stripped away, the last thing I want to do is take away your agency by saying, this is what you have to think.
Oh,
or this is how you should respond. And so
tell me more about that. Because I used to be the person, and I still have some of that was like, I've given you this information. Why aren't you responding this particular way in this particular time?
No, I am 200% that person. That's why I have to fight it so much, because that is my normal.
I have regret over this. I have a lot of regret over
so much
being like, hey, pastors in Middle Tennessee, why aren't you talking about Dave Ramsey? Tagging them in my Twitter.
And as an Enneagram 1, I have a strong sense of right and wrong. And of course, I think that my way is right. Yeah. And so you should all do it. Otherwise, you're stupid. I recognize that about myself, and therefore I have to fight it all the time, because I also recognize that that is doing what I have so often received from other people, is demeaning them or dismissing them or any of these things that I have felt done to me that can be harmful. And I don't want to strip someone else of their agency. So I want to be a place that can provide, hopefully, some clarity, and then provide some kind of really practical resource that allows you to take an actual step towards or away from something that you get to choose.
It's a great answer to the question of what is mine to do, because you have very much thought through what your ministry, your nonprofit's about.
Yeah. And so one of those values is agency over prescription. It's like, I would much prefer that you be the agent. You get to make the choice of what you want to do with this, rather than me prescribing that this is the way you are supposed to do it.
Have you had experiences where people misinterpreted a way that you have responded in trying to do that?
Probably. I can't think of one off the top of my head. I will say that I was really encouraged by a response to the Substack that I wrote about being responsive versus reactive. And it came a few days later, as these things tend to do. Wow. So it's like you think that you publish it and just no one is out there, right? And then someone who I very much respect and admire kind of wrote back, like, thank you for not adding to the noise and for being really thoughtful about this. I thought that's all I wanted.
Yeah.
I just wanted to show that we can be thoughtful, that we don't have to just react to everything. And I read lots of stuff about this, and I read it from people on both sides. And I read it from friends of the survivor and friends of Tim and the organization. And so it was in absorbing what I felt like I could, because again, there's that level of capacity and window of tolerance and all these things. It's what would be helpful for me to add to this whole conversation. And for me, it was, if this is a place that is working to provide practical pathways toward healing and wholeness, what does healing look like and what does wholeness look like here?
My superpower is connecting. And so I often think, how can I connect my people that listen to my podcast to some sort of person or resource that would help in this situation, would offer some information or expertise that I don't have, or encourage them That's sort of some of the questions that I don't necessarily like overtly like I'm thinking about it, but like subconsciously I'm thinking, oh, I'm going to have a conversation with David Pooler from Baylor about adult clergy
Same.
sexual abuse because people don't understand that. I'm
Mm-hmm.
seeing conversations where people, some people are wildly wrong and very confident in what they're saying and it's wrong. And there's other people that are like, I don't understand. This isn't how we've talked about things. This is very different. And I don't tell me more. And I want to respond to the tell me more people and the people that are maybe they're not with me on it, but someday they might be. At some point they may be like, I think I need to listen to that. Because I was a
Mm-hmm.
person that didn't want to hear some things for a really long time. And
Sure.
some people kept doors open for me. And because they did, or they put something out there in the world available that I could interact with on my own in a way that didn't feel like pressure on me. And that was so helpful. So if I can put something out there that at some point somebody's like, okay, I'm ready. All right, Dr.
Yeah.
Pooler, you are the expert on this.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me what you know and why you know it. That
Mm-hmm.
that gets me super excited. Like if I can respond in a way that says, okay, this person understands this situation, let's have a conversation. Let's
Yeah.
share them with people.
Yeah. And so something else I'm actively trying to do is I really do not like the spotlight. It's why I show my face so rarely on social media. Like there are people who are just so natural and they just get on there and they talk and they post and it's so engaging and it's like it draws you in. It's like, but I also know that I want to actively resist becoming that person. And so it's also why I so rarely do a solo podcast. It's like I want to invite an expert who knows more than me, or I want to invite someone who has something to say that I think is worth sharing with our community. Because what I'm hoping to do is to foster a community that feels safe for people.
Mm-hmm.
I'm hoping to foster a community. Two of the other values that I'll spout off real quick are we want to be driven by curiosity over certainty.
Yeah.
And people over position. And that's the idea that if you are sure of all of the things, and if you have doctrine and dogma to back all of it up, then this may not be the place for you. And that's okay. And if you do ever have questions or are curious about something or want to choose to hear a person's story over what you believe is the right position, then come on back anytime.
Yeah.
But this is the stance that we want to take, is like we want to approach things with really open hands and curiosity and choosing to hear people versus standing on a position.
I find that so I'm chuckling about you saying that you've resisted like doing solo episodes or like putting yourself out there on social media, because in the last couple of years, that's when like I've really pulled back.
Mm-hmm.
And even now when I do a podcast, I feel like I used to be like on Instagram stories all the time. And now I kind of want to just publish it and run and hope whoever needs to find it can, apart from me. Yeah. And I'm trying to work through if that's good stewardship, if that's humility, or if it's not good stewardship. Like I just did an Instagram story. I'm like, I'm showing my face and I never do. And it's because I want to tell you to go listen to my podcast. And I feel awkward because I haven't been showing up here with my face very often, but like social media really wants a person. And I just feel like that is one of the things that has gotten us in so much trouble, is that we build things around a personality. And I so want to push against it because I see what it does to myself when I am the person. And I've seen what it has done when somebody uses their platform and everybody's come around like the face of the movement. And then they mess up or they do something that, is questionable. And then it puts into question so much else that might have been good, for better or worse. So I am also, I don't know, the tension there is hard. And I don't want to say that in a way that's like, hey, you people that put your face out there all the time, you're doing it wrong. All I know is for me, and it's not I'm my struggling with how I'm supposed to show up.
Yeah. Well, and here's the thing about all the things that you said, they can all be true at the same time. Do you know what I mean? Because we all have a story that is
Yeah.
guiding these decisions and these tensions and holding these tensions for us. Because I also know that I am extremely comfortable behind a microphone, right? I spent 20 years on a platform behind a microphone, leading hundreds of people at a time every single Sunday. I know I can do it. I know I'm very comfortable at it. I know that I'm good at it. And at the same time, I recognize that in this space, having read books like Bully Pulpit and Celebrities for Jesus and When Narcissism Comes to Church and all of these things, that all of those things also live inside of me.
Yeah.
And so in an active resistance to becoming the personality, in air quotes, just feels so gross to me in a way. And at the same time, I understand why people are so drawn to it. I get it. But I want to make sure that I'm featuring and lifting up and centering other voices so that I don't become that person.
I totally get that.
Here's a question for you. How do you decide to respond? Because you get pitches all the time. So how do you decide to respond when someone pitches you someone to interview?
Oh, if it's somebody that I'm aware of, it's a really easy thing to say, is this a good fit or not? Because there's everybody that has a book that's coming out wants to be on the podcast. And bless you, people that are trying to get your work into the world. I get it. I know that it is a lot of work. Also, I can't have everybody that has a book coming out on my podcast. And it's a lot of work. We aren't making money really. Like I have some ads on my podcast that maybe sometimes cover my costs. Sometimes. But I'm doing an advertisement for your book in many ways when I do an interview about a book. And so it has to be a conversation that I feel like is something I wanted to talk about anyways, or that maybe I hadn't thought about and it seems like it would be valuable. And I try to make it not just let's talk through every chapter of your book, but like in the best case, it's something adjacent that we're like, here's a theme you talk about. Let's dig into that a little more in our conversation. And then I'll ask people to check you out later. But there are also pitches from people that are, it is a form letter. They have searched podcasts, put in my name, and then filled in a random name of an episode that has recently aired and say, hello, Amy. I just heard your conversation with Caleb Campbell, and it looks like your podcast is about entrepreneurs in the faith space.
I saw that.
And I was so moved by the conversation. And I have to admit, Brian, I do respond sometimes and say, can you tell me what particularly moved you about the conversation? Because I do not believe they actually listened. Don't tell me you listened and were moved by it if you didn't. Please. Sometimes it's not a no, it's a not right now. Like I am too booked out, or I don't want to do a lot of conversations about books. If it's about a book, I'm kind of trying to figure out where I want to go. And so it'll be a maybe. Sometimes if I feel like they're a decent person and I know somebody they'd fit better with, I will say, hey, I know Brian Lee. It's not a good fit for me right now, but Brian may be a good person to pitch. And I will say, here's Brian's email. Or I will say, my friend Jennifer just started a podcast and she is in the faith space and I trust her. Pitch her. She'd be great. And I feel good about that because it doesn't take a whole lot of extra work. And I do kind of want to have goodwill in this area of people thinking that I will consider in a good faith somebody that comes to me and actually knows what's happening here. Some people are paying publicists to do this for them. Some publishing houses, it's part of the deal for publishing for publishing a book is that they will have publicists that reach out to podcasters. Brian and I get emails from publishing houses telling us books that are coming out, asking us if we want review copies, and they make it really easy if we want to connect with authors. I want that to continue to happen. And I think it can only happen if I protect the space and make it be about what it needs to be and not just say yes to everything. And also try to respond as quickly as I can because some people are waiting. They're waiting to hear so that they can. I've been the person setting up, podcast tours for people and waiting for a response and not getting one and emailing them again and hoping. So it's a long answer, but sometimes I troll them a little to ask if I don't think they actually listened.
Which I think is completely fair. I just counted, I've read and or recorded and or prepared 14 interviews this year based on a book.
Oh, world, do you know how much time it takes? This is not
14.
just recording a podcast. It's reading the book.
And I have at least 4 or 5 emails sitting in my inbox that I haven't filed away as a no.
Yeah.
Of other books that are either already published or waiting to be published and saying, this is a maybe or this is a not right now because I'm utterly overwhelmed.
Yeah.
And one of these emails even started with, hey, I know you may be at capacity or over capacity, but would you consider, sort of a thing.
Yeah.
And the funny thing is, like, funny is not the right word, but it's like, this is not a world I ever anticipated being a part of.
Yeah.
Right? Like a year ago, this podcast didn't even exist. So it's wild to me that I'm getting pitches from people. Yeah, it's been less than a year.
That is wild.
This launched on July 1st. Well, I know for me, and I'm fairly certain for you, it's like, I want to be one of the people who actually reads the book because I want to have an intelligent conversation about it.
Yeah.
And here's the thing, when I'm asking questions, yes, I am thinking about me and things that I'm curious about, but I'm also always trying to be aware that the whole reason Broken to Beloved started, other than the cohort with the summit, was to answer the question, what now? Mm-hmm. Because all the books that I had access to at the time did a great job defining terms or validating my experience. And very few of them offered me, but what do I do now? Like, where do I actually go from here? And so I want to serve the community well by offering them some kind of practical handle to say, this is not just a book that you read to add to your shelf or to say, great, more theory.
Yeah.
But what can we actually walk away with? And if there's one thing that we can actually do, what is that thing?
Yeah. I used to do more, I shared people's stories from time to time. Mm-hmm. And I realized that I don't really think that's my lane to be in. I don't think that it shouldn't exist in the world. But I started to think, I think I don't want to do that because I didn't know if I was doing it well. And it was a lot of work. It's so much work.
It's a lot of work.
It's a weighty thing to carry somebody's story. So I still get pitches from some people that I think are just hoping to share a story with the world. Mm-hmm. And man, it can be so powerful, but also it might be the wrong time. If you're not healed or if there's, different things going on, it's just really hard when you want to help somebody's healing and you aren't exactly sure if this will help or hinder. And so for me, I'm not doing that right now because I just feel like it's a hard thing to do. I think this has provided, social media podcasts have provided a way for people to get their story out there in a way that has never been available before. I'm so grateful for that. And I cannot pretend that I did not use my own podcast to tell my own story over multiple podcast episodes. And so that would be a real hypocritical thing to be like, it's okay for me, but not for you. But I'm just saying on my podcast, I've kind of put the brakes on doing that right now because I haven't figured out exactly my rule for who I say yes to, how to decide if it's the best time. And so that's sort of, we kind of morph as we go into okay, this is what works for me and this is what doesn't. Sometimes you just don't know until you get into it for a while.
Yeah. Well, and so you've had a bit of a roller coaster with the podcast and deciding, do I want to change the name and do something else?
Oh, yeah.
Do I want to come back and do this? And, hearing you talk about what do I want this to be, what are you hoping Untangled Faith is for people who are listening?
Brian.
Or who find it?
What am I hoping it will be? You're right. I started it April of 2021, and there wasn't a lot of podcasts around this topic in April 2021. Believe it or not, a lot has changed since April of 2021. And I did a little over a year ago, I was like, I think I need to be done. I was stressed out. I felt the pressure of the world either rightly or wrongly, that people wanted me to respond to certain things certain ways in a certain time. And if I didn't, I was going to be blasted, called out, destroyed. I mean, this is a rough world. This is a rough world.
It is.
And I wasn't sure if I wanted to deal with that. And, I've got kids going to college. There's a lot of things. I thought maybe I want to make a little bit of money, get a part-time job, which I did for a little while. But then I really missed podcasting. And so I was going to do something, came up with an idea. I spent a lot of money on it. And then I did a pilot episode. Somebody was like, hey, I have a thing that already has that name. I didn't want to fight her on it. And so I think I would have won. It wasn't worth it to me. And so I just brought back Untangled Faith. You ask what I want to accomplish. I'm still figuring out exactly where and what I am in this world. I feel that existential, like I don't have my identity because the world is so different than April 2021.
Oh,
and I don't want to be let's just talk about the terrible things that are happening. I do want to provide something helpful for people, educational for people. I don't want to just talk about spiritual abuse. I want to be willing to talk about what's happening in the world that is, there's things happening in the political world that are like, we cannot ignore the impact on our faith that Christian nationalism has had on the evangelical church and just our communities. And so I'm trying to figure out exactly. I don't know. So that's my answer, Brian. I do not know. I just want us to be healthy people having interesting conversations, but I reserve the right to be done at any time.
And don't we all?
Shut it down. I reserve the right.
Don't we all? How do you hope people receive you or see you as they're listening?
That's a good question.
If people would finish the sentence, Amy is the voice of.
I did run into someone at a conference recently who told me I was the Oprah.
No, wow. Look
I
at
don't
you.
think that's true, honestly. And I have some questions about Oprah and her influence on the world.
Uh-huh.
Amy I hope they see me as a helpful big sister who says, I know it's hard. And I believe that you've seen some hard things. Come sit by me. And I hope I can give you a little bit of encouragement and hope that there is life and goodness out there still, and you don't have to pretend it was perfect. It's okay to show up and say the thing that was uncomfortable about the church thing, and you won't be shunned. You won't be shunned. It's okay.
I love that. That's how I hear it when I listen to your podcast.
Oh, well, thanks. I'm hitting it. I'm just hitting the nail on the head then. I'm good.
Well, what I appreciate about the way that you conduct your show and ask your questions is it feels invitational. It doesn't feel like you're putting a period on things. You ask really good, insightful questions that aren't just questions for question's sake, but they're getting to something, right? It's help us shine a light on this thing. And like you're saying, it's untangled, like help us untangle this mess of things that I'm holding in my hands.
Yeah. What do we not understand here?
Yeah. Help us to understand it. Help us to untangle this.
Yeah. Well, thanks. I appreciate that.
Yeah, of course. We kind of talked at the beginning, and so I want to wrap up maybe with this idea of having a default versus a final position.
I was hoping that we didn't run out of time to talk about that.
Yes.
On believing people. There's the idea of like, believe women. You believe the people that say they have been harmed. What does that mean?
Yeah.
What does that mean for us, right?
Yep. So it was a sentence I wrote in that post about being responsive versus reactive. And I had a conversation with someone who, again, I very much respect and admire. And at first I thought I was in trouble because the way that they phrased the question was, hey, I want to talk to you specifically about this line.
That sounds like an evangelical PTSD response.
Oh, it 100% was. It totally
I'm in trouble.
I'm in trouble because I respect you, and now I think I've ruined it. And it wasn't that at all. It was a wonderful conversation. So first of all, let me say that the sentence was something along the lines of, when it comes to abuse and when it comes to the abused, my default position is to believe you. If you come to me and say, hey, this is my story and this is what happened, my default is to say, I believe you and I'm so sorry. That should never have happened.
Yeah.
Because I know what it takes to speak up and to share the story. And I know how utterly re-traumatizing it is for people to not be believed when they finally do work up the courage to say something out loud. And that more often than not, that is the greater trauma than the actual event that happened. And so that is my default position.
The impact.
Yes, the impact. And so having said that, it is not always my final position.
Mm-hmm.
And this is where I landed in that conversation I had with my friend, was that yes, it is my default, but it is not my final, because I want to validate your experience and I also want more information.
Yeah.
Because if I am now hearing two different stories, now we're at a place where, is this the kind of thing where only one of these things can be true?
Yeah. So good.
And so now we have to do more work. Also, like going all the way back to the beginning, is this even mine to do?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, and I think there's a difference between in your heart deciding what to do with somebody telling you something and then having to do something that anybody even knows about in response to it. I mean, you could be like, I just talked to Susie. They told me Jane hurt them and I need to post it on social media.
Right.
No, I mean, the response I've had situations where somebody has come to me and said, this person that I know you admire and that I know you know, they were an ass to me. In that moment, what can I do? I have a decision to make, right? And who wants to be told that somebody they admire or they, is like a friend of theirs has harmed somebody else? And that person is right there in front of you, literally or figuratively. In this case, I said, I'm really sorry. I wish they hadn't done that. Man, does that mean that I will never talk to that person that they said harmed them? No. What it did mean for me, though, is pay attention. Are there patterns? What am I missing something that I should be seeing? And there's no quick response. The only quick response was, I'm really sorry. They shouldn't have done that. I'm so sorry that happened. I'm sorry you had that experience. I mean, it really doesn't cost a whole lot to say, I believe people can have a bad day. Is this somebody that had a bad day, which anybody can have, or is it a pattern of behavior? I don't know. But I believe either one of those things could be true. And regardless of which one it is, this person felt hurt.
Yeah.
And they need me to say, I'm sorry. And so I did. And I just wait and see what happens. And so that's sort of my default is if somebody tells me that they have been harmed, I think about the impact too. I think it's very real that they feel hurt. I think I'm not going to argue and say, no, you don't feel bad. No, that person didn't make you feel bad. I'm going to believe them. What I don't know is, in a lot of cases is if it's a pattern, an ongoing pattern, and is this interpersonal conflict or is this abusive? I don't know. I know people deserve compassion. But I do think we get in trouble when we require people to do something with the information we've given them. Like, I had a bad experience. I'm telling you, Brian, and now you absolutely must do XYZ. That's a red flag. A healthy person will say, I had a bad experience. You might hear something different. It makes me feel uncomfortable. But they're not saying, don't believe anything they say and do not interact with them.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's uncomfortable.
It is. And this gets back to the whole agency thing.
Yeah.
Again, with that whole trauma awareness, it's being able to sit with someone and say, I'm so sorry that happened to you. And resisting the urge to say, but I've never had that experience with this person.
Yeah. You don't have to say that because you
don't
can
have to say that at all.
I'm working on a Substack post that says, it's really about, that's not the person I know. I know that person. You don't know that person like I do as an excuse, but what have we seen? Two things can be true at once. And we need to be able to work through those things. And depending on our relationship with the person, what we do next will vary. If it's somebody we've never platformed, we never have any interaction with, we don't really need to do anything else except for be compassionate towards that person. We do have to think about it if it's somebody that we have lended some platform to or given them like sort of a endorsement, then I think a little bit more about it. I don't do anything immediate unless I start seeing patterns that alarm me. But I do pay different attention if it's somebody that I have promoted to other people.
As we wrap up, untangling faith, right? For people who are in that space and they feel like they are all tangled up and they don't know which way is up or down or what to do next, or they're trying to find a church or get out of a church or figure out what they think about God, what is one step that has helped you in untangling faith?
Having community, which is a church word, with people that aren't all inside one particular church. If you can even find somebody that says, I love Jesus, I've never gone to your church, and I am willing to hold the love of Jesus, and also the church sucks sometimes, and your experience was terrible, and you're willing to form your bad church ladies group, or whatever. That is so healing.
Yeah.
People say that we're harmed in community. I've heard Mary DeMuth say that, and that we're healed in community. Well, sometimes, like, how are we even going to find community? Are we even, I'm not putting myself in that. I'm saying there may be one person, and I think there is one person, and maybe you wrote them off because they were Catholic. Maybe you only were ever friends with people that were in your church. Maybe circle back with some of those things that you didn't think were going to be a helpful relationship with you because you felt like they were outside of your circle. It will make your world bigger and more, and your relationships richer. It will also put you in a place of not having such a risk to your life and your emotional life if you have some sort of rupture again. Anytime all of your support structures come from one particular community, man, you're in trouble if anything happens with that. So I find them one person. There is, I believe there is at least one person that's willing to hold all the things and not say, I need you to put on a happy face.
Yeah.
Yep.
And in the seasons where you have felt utterly isolated or alone, or didn't know how to find that one person, is there something that helped you in those seasons?
It's the cop out to say, podcasts help. It really does help to hear people have these conversations. Seeing that there is goodness for real outside of the things that we really stereotypically thought of as godly and Christian, right? Like, there's so many beautiful things that God's created in our world that can just get us out of our head. Where are the helpers?
Yeah.
Mr. Rogers said it right. Like, there's some people doing good things in the world, and maybe they don't share your faith. Maybe they do, and you just don't know because they aren't making a big deal about it. And like, there's somebody doing something that you could just be like, I'm just going to show up and I'm going to serve at the food pantry. I'm going to, hand out water bottles. I'm going to do something. I really believe it, but I do. It's so hard. It is very lonely. It can be really, really isolating. So I don't want to make light of that.
Yeah. But I appreciate that. I think, I often write about or post about glimmers and that idea of looking for those beautiful moments in our day that can help us to regulate, and how important connection is. And it's a really lovely reminder that sometimes the connection you need when you're feeling so isolated is back to yourself.
Yeah. That's good. That doesn't sound like the heart is deceitful above all else, Brian, and we should not be trusting our guts. You're not passing the good evangelical test. Sorry about that. You're not a very good Calvinist right now. That's what I'm saying.
Well, I don't think I've ever been a really
totally
good Calvinist.
Depraved. That's what you are, Brian.
That is me. I have a lovely conversation with Jeff Chu about his book, Good Soil. And the idea of worm theology, because that's another one of our values as goodness over wickedness. And that instead of this utterly depraved, I am but a lowly worm point
Yeah.
of view that we like to take the Genesis 1 that we were created and called very good point of view. He said such a lovely piece about how, part of understanding that was understanding that Calvin was a lawyer and not a farmer and didn't know what worms actually do, which is take really gross things
Yeah.
and through their poop make really beautiful, good soil that the earth needs to survive.
Yes. We need more farmers.
We need more farmers and we need more worms.
Yeah.
Amy, I'm so glad you made time for this.
Thanks. Thanks for inviting me. This has been good.
Where can people find you online?
Search for the Untangled Faith podcast anywhere you listen to podcasts. My website is untangledfaithpodcast.com. You should find all my episodes there and links to anything you need. So I'm pretty easy to find.
Amy, thanks for being here.
Thanks, Brian. It's been good.
What a fun conversation. I know it was something different than what we're used to, and honestly, for me, that was a refreshing break. If you enjoyed it as much as I did, be sure to follow Amy and say thanks for being on the show. You can find links and all the things in the show notes. Coming up on the show, we have Michael Cusick, David Pooler, Melissa Hogan, Hillary McBride, and many more. Subscribe or follow the show to get new episodes automatically. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave us a rating and review or share with your friends. It helps us out so much. As a 501c3 nonprofit, our work is made possible by our generous donors. If this has been helpful to you, consider joining us today at brokentobeloved.org/support. Thanks so much for taking the time out of your day to listen. I hope it's been helpful. Here's to moving toward healing and wholeness together. I'll see you next time.